Welcome back. This week we get the axle shafts pressed out of the hub assemblies for the Isuzu Trooper in preparation of new bearings and seals. There's a little more footage on the pedal car project, and an older enduro motorcycle came in that hadn't run in a very long time. We're going to get busy working on that. Hope you enjoy it. So we put some serious amount of pressure and then heat on this thing to get it to move, and even now it's taking a lot of pressure, so I'm not going to add any more heat right this second. But I am going to put a little more pressure on it. You'll hear this thing pop as the axle's trying to come out of the housing, the bearing. Should pop here now, because it's still not moving. It's under a considerable amount of pressure, as you just saw. Still not quite coming out all the way. Put more pressure on it. Now I'm going to apply some more heat. See if we can get it to do it again. There's another one.
No matter how many times you do this, you always jump.
There it is again. Turn the heat off. The axle seems to be moving now. That's a lot of pressure. Alright, so it looks like the exciter ring for the ABS is out. Now it's just a matter of pushing the axle through the bearing. And there it is.
Once we get the seal out, it'll be time to press out the bearing. With the axle out, we can now press out the bearing.
Then it's just a matter of watching that driver to make sure it's moving.
And moving. And there's the bearing. So here's the hub assembly with the bearing pressed out, and we'll get all this cleaned up and get ready to press the new bearing back in.
With all the force and pressure that it took to get the axle and the bearing out of the hub assembly, a little bit of damage was done internally. Now, normally there's a press fit of 1/1000th to 1/1000th of an inch between the outer race of the bearing and the hub assembly, so it has to be pressed in with an actual press. But this one has too much clearance in it, so I'm able to push the bearing all the way in by hand and then get it out just as easily. And that shouldn't happen. So getting another hub assembly for the vehicle is not an option, so we're going to do something called knurling, where we're going to put divots on the inside of the hub assembly to move the metal around a little bit, which will allow the bearing to be pressed in and hold it much tighter, because we do not want the outer race to be spinning. We only want the inner race to spin with the axle. And then we're also going to use some bearing stake or a special sealant or bonding agent to put the bearing in when we put it all together.
The three marks you see there were made by a center punch. We're putting those around the perimeter of where the outer race will fit into the hub. And this is going to make it bite into the hub so that the outer race doesn't spin like we were just talking about. You can see we've got a lot of these divots around the perimeter of the housing, probably more than we need, but I want to make sure that that outer race does not spin. Time to take out the second one. It takes a considerable amount of heat to get that hub hot enough to expand it to get it pressed out, but we're also going to be adding some penetrating oil. It's starting to creak. Now with it moving, we can just punch it the rest of the way through. James is grinding the welds for the drive system on the car, as it's going to have to be moved for the wheels we're using. James is center punching on these wheels that we are going to use so he can drill pilot holes before using a Dremel tool to open the holes up for the drive system. This is a lot more work than welding, but it's going to make for a nicer job. Had this old motorcycle come in that wanted to get running. First thing we're doing is checking for fire, and we've got good fire. Now we're going to go ahead and pull the carburetor off of it and get it apart, get it cleaned up, and then see if we can get this thing to run. Some of the viewers that have been following along over the years have seen us do this several times. Right now he's turning the pilot adjustment screw in to count the number of turns that it's going to be out, and then we'll reset it close to that position when we put it back together. Next time on Bulldog Builds, the motorcycle carburetor all cleaned up. We'll get it back together and adjust it and put back onto the bike. The CV joints we took apart a couple of weeks ago, we'll have them back together and full of grease. And we no footage of the Rogue this week, but we will have some for you next week. We'll have it up and running. See you then.